I like being in person though. It's more. I think it's more better being in person than just being online. But
yeah, I agree.
It's been a tough week.
There's Mr. Fry. What's it do? Okay, well, at least it's out of the way there.
Which car are you working on these days?
Oh, I've got 3 Saabs in my shop.
Are you working on all 3 of them?
Man.
I just don't know why it creates that creates that bar.
Whatever.
It's the zoom window.
window,
Buy it.
yeah.
I don't. It's never used to do that.
It was higher up.
But I think I can make it work.
What's the story with the guy over by Habitat on Harris Street? He must have 100.
100? About 1,000.
Really?
He might.
I mean, it goes on forever. And
How he gets away with it is beyond me.
I know. And I don't know that he can run. Do you ever go get parts from him?
Mm-hmm.
What is this, an active repair shop or what is
Yeah.
it? It is.
You see, if he has room to move in there.
What's the story with all those cars? You bought them or people just left them or?
I think it's sort of a Saab graveyard. For various reasons.
Just the environmental impact. Some of them are leaking all kinds of stuff into the ground. I got a new, let's see what year was it, 1980, a new turbo.
Hey, Mr. Fry.
Andrew, good evening. You know Alvin?
Ben. I do know. How are you, sir?
Good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
Andrew. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you, Andrew.
Well, the 4 of you makes a quorum.
Here we go.
Assuming you're still working at Region 10 or you're not retired.
Not yet. My goal is to be gone by about this time next year, if not sooner.
Okay. You're not counting the days though yet.
Not yet. Just the months.
Going back and forth with my wife about whether I think of bill sooner than that, as in maybe March.
You must have plenty of years in with VLS.
33.
Constitutes
A
a
few.
reasonable amount.
I can tell you, as a retired VRS guy, it's a good situation.
I haven't quite hit 65 yet, so I could stick around longer than that.
All right, it's 6:31, so I'll call this meeting to order. This is the November meeting of the Charlottesville Police Civilian Oversight Board. I'm Jeff Frazier, I'm the acting chair. And we will introduce the new members in a moment. We have some, pleased to say we now once again have a quorum, first time since May of this year, so we can actually get some business done. So we have a backlog of minutes and agendas that we need to approve. We couldn't approve without a quorum, and I realize the new members wouldn't have and shouldn't have necessarily gone back and read that, but we can still ask you to vote on the acceptance of those as a quorum. I'd first like to ask for approval of tonight's meeting agenda. We should have it in front of you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Approval of past meeting agendas. This goes back July, August, September, October. And nothing controversial there, I can assure you. Could I get a motion to approve those, just so we have it on the record? So move. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then likewise with the minutes, when we had no quorum, we have one May, July, August, September, October. If I could get a motion to approve those. Second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All
All right, thank you for that. So I'm very pleased to welcome our two newest members. To my left, Mr. Rory Vaughn joins us this month. Rory, you want to just say a word or two about yourself?
Well, I have been living in the city for about 2.5 years now. I have a background in public policy and was interested in the position, having previously worked with Dr. Dobson, and being interested in wanting to work more with the community and in public service. So when I saw that there was an opening here, I applied and was encouraged to apply Kyle, and here I am.
Thank you, welcome, pleased to have you.
Thank you.
And then to my far right, Mr. Albert Lefebvre. Albert, you want to tell folks a little bit about you?
I am retired from 20 years of service as an adult probation officer, and then 20 years as the mitigation specialist at the Public Defender's Office. One of my greatest achievements is the helping formation of the therapeutic docket in our community, and very pleased with that.
Would you just say 2 sentences about the therapeutic docket for those folks who aren't familiar with it?
Yes, it's an alternative involving treatment. Your disposition is deferred until you follow the treatment requirements. You go to court every 2 weeks and report to the judge with your progress. You go through phases and hopefully eventually graduate.
Is it primarily for drug and alcohol offenders?
No.
Could be any
It's
offender.
It's different from drug court.
Okay,
It's for
mental health
mental
issues.
health
Yeah.
yes.
All right, so welcome to our new members. There is application window for we still have 2 vacancies on the board. The application window is open until the 17th of this month. I understand that we have 2 applicants so far pending.
I think we're up to 4 now.
Oh, we're up to 4, okay.
Yeah, I believe a couple more have come in. Sometimes I think the board members get those emails.
Yeah, I did not get additional emails on.
Okay, I don't know, it sounds like
Did you
some
get
came
them?
through. I get them,
Okay.
yes. So, and I have access to the portal where I can
Okay,
actually
you can actually
see
see a little bit.
the full application.
Okay.
So if my count is right, I think we're up to 4 applicants.
Okay, excellent.
So based on that, I just suspect at this point, City Council will wait till the closure of the window on the 17th, see if any others come in, and then they will set up times to review and interview the applicants that they select.
Right.
So just as a reminder to the board and the public, City Council is the one that ultimately selects those who are seated on the board. And I did want to mention just that prior item. I am working on getting both business cards and then
Okay.
plates for the table, as well as name tags. This was a conversation that we had about the need to just see everyone's name, both in this context of, hey, Dr. Dobson, but also in just anytime we do anything public with the public, just people having name tags, that's a benefit. And then if you have a card that has your email, your board email, that also helps to just be able to facilitate discussion whenever and wherever you are out in the community.
Excellent.
So, working on that.
So remind us, so council doesn't necessarily interview all the applicants. They do interview them and then make a choice. What's the process?
They would review the applications first,
Okay,
and then they would seek the input of the office on those applications that are
Okay.
submitted, just basically giving thoughts or opinions on the application.
okay,
Then they would select candidates to interview.
okay.
Yeah.
But not necessarily everybody gets interviewed.
Correct. And that's entirely up to them who gets interviewed and who doesn't, depending on what type of seat they're trying to fill and things like that, so.
And if the window closes on the 17th, then that process happens shortly thereafter, or is it indeterminate?
I would suspect it would happen closer into December.
Okay.
Because they would have to, they probably would discuss that in closed session at their next meeting, so probably their second November meeting, which means they might do interviews in the first meeting of December.
Okay.
It depends, because again, we're not the only board, I mean, there's a bunch of them.
Bunch of boards
So
pending, yes.
they're doing a similar thing. It's not always the same for other boards where they have to interview, but they still have to discuss and make appointments. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's possible before our December meeting, we have those 2 new members appointed. That's
Okay,
possible.
excellent. Okay.
If not, then I definitely would suspect by the January meeting we
Okay.
would.
And it's less urgent now that we have a quorum, but it still would be nice to get a full board again, so.
Yep.
All right, thank you. The next item of business is the nomination of an election of officers. We need to elect a chair and a vice chair. I would like to open the floor to nominations. I'm going to start with vice chair if we could. I would like to nominate Dr. Dobson for the position of vice chair. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Well,
And now we can open the floor for nominations for chair.
I was going to nominate Jeff Frazier for chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you all.
Simple.
Thank you, Dr. Dobson, for serving.
Yeah.
You already are.
Apologies for being tardy.
No problem.
Sorry, can I ask who seconded that one?
I
Okay. think it was Rory, but- Rory.
We both spoke.
I can, as long as I document.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to hand it off now to Mr. Walker, who's going to talk a little bit about this document we have in front of us, the overview pamphlet, and I think will the slides be up as well?
I'm hoping
Okay.
they won't be super cut off, so we'll see. Because I don't know, recently it like hides part of the screen because of the overlay. I don't know why it does that. I want that box to go away. Okay, at least it's small enough. I'm like, I can't get rid of the faces on the side, so we'll just have to deal with that for now.
George, can you see the screen okay?
Yep, okay. So what I prepared, and what's on the screen is printed out in front of you, so if you don't want to turn around, you don't have to. It's up to you. But what I decided to do was just create a short little picture of just an overview of the board and the status of the board. Through independent conversations with our new members and just my weekly conversations with Dr. Frazier and Dr. Dobson, it is well known that the board is in a state of transition, and it's been in states of transition over its history several times. One major positive tonight is that the board has a quorum, which means the board can make official votes and recommendations on things. That's an important piece of this whole equation because it allows the board to make public and direct statements about opinions on anything related to the police department or its own policy and its own governing document. As if you remember, back in September, we actually held, the board members who were here held a joint meeting with City Council. Held it right in this room. All the City Council was here. All the current members of the board at that time were here. And what was discussed was the initiation of some amendments to the ordinance. That first round that we discussed during that meeting was mainly cleanup. It was cleanup of the ordinance from reordering some stuff around. It was cleanup from the perspective of cutting some things that were just irrelevant or redundant. And then one of the biggest things was clearly establishing the office of the Police Civilian Oversight Board and some of its roles as it relates to the board. That's something that's always been up in the air, just not really a clear delineation of the board's relationship to the office and the office relationship to the board. Just from my own perspective as the only office member right now, I view the office's role as supporting whatever direction the board wishes to go in within its authorized authority. So if the board wants to focus on reviewing complaints from internal affairs, then it's the goal of the office to be able to serve that up to the board so that you can conduct that work easily and efficiently. If the board wants to go in a direction of looking at data from a system like the license plate readers, then that would be the role of the office to provide that data, provide some commentary and analysis, and let the board then discuss, look at the policies, things like that. So the board has a lot of flexibility once it has a quorum and can decide on which direction to go. The office is meant to support that. So just a quick little highlight reel that I've made here that will cooperate with me. Role of the board, I put that in there just from a broad perspective. This is often from all the community meetings I've had, the community events I've been to, from discussions with board members, from discussions with other city leaders. Oh, thank you, Remy, I appreciate that. The core goal of the board is to enhance public safety and protect civil rights by providing independent and objective oversight of the Charlottesville Police Department. Some big words, 3 big words here: accountability, transparency, and community trust. So those can mean a whole bunch of things, and they mean different things to different people. One of the board's goals is to define what does that mean in the work that the board does. What does it mean for the board to conduct accountability? Or what does it mean to produce transparent outcomes and records and reports? What does it mean to build trust with the community? And so one of the other core aspects of the board is to serve as that bridge between the community and the police department, not in a way that it's trying to say, hey, let's resolve all conflicts, but rather to be a voice, to be a group that listens to the community and is then able to change that listening, that understanding into meaningful recommendations, into policy recommendations, and into work that helps the community see a little bit behind the curtain of the police department. That's the goal and the intent of the board as it was created. This slide really gets into some of the details, and I am happy to answer questions, so if you want to pause, discuss, or ask questions, I would love that. We can also wait till the end and do it at the end, but it's up to you. If you think of something, jump in. So duties of the board as stated in the ordinance. This is something that has been shown publicly before at our town hall, I think it was end of April last year. Trying to explain to the public what the board is authorized to do in the ordinance. It is authorized to conduct investigations. So that would be a citizen comes to the board with a complaint and saying, Officer A did this thing, and I'm complaining. I want that investigated. Technically, the board is authorized to do that. It can recommend discipline as part of that process. So if something's investigated and it's found to be true and sustained, and that would be the term we use, sustained, then discipline could be recommended. That recommendation would go to the chief of police. The chief of police is the one that ultimately determines discipline for an officer. The board can conduct audits. So an audit might be detailed into a system, a practice, trends and data of the police department. Could be an audit related to budget and spending of the department. All those things are contained within the powers of the board. Conduct public hearings. Public hearings has been a big topic of the community, of wanting to have a public venue to hear multiple sides of maybe a complaint or an incident that occurred. That's what would be the purpose of a hearing. Could be about a policy too. Recommend policy changes. This has been the primary focus of the board up to date. Policy changes and policy recommendations have been the primary work of the board. Review police budgets and policies. I think it's kind of redundant, but produce public reports. One of the goals of the office is to produce as much reporting as we can, so as to be transparent about the work of the office, the work of the board, and aspects into the police department that we can share publicly. And then also host town halls, public listening sessions. That's something we have done in the past. We have gone to, as a board, as an office, gone to many public events. Usually there's many in the summer. A lot of back to school events, a lot of different, of all sizes. We've even, Mr. Dillard had invited us to the NAACP at one point, in which the former director, myself, and Dr. Frazier went and spoke there, answered questions. So there's a lot of opportunities for public engagement. And part of the conversation tonight is what is the message, the narrative of this board that we want to start carrying forward into the future? What is the work that this board wants to focus on, and what is the messaging around that focus that we want to carry forward to the public? On the other side there, you have some practical limitations. So the ordinance says the board can do these things. There are practical limitations. One of the main ones is that this is a volunteer board. Some board members have full-time jobs. Some board members can't commit every waking moment to the work that the board wants to do. And so that has always been a challenge. Part of the recent set of recommendations to the ordinance was reducing a little bit of the burden on the board members. One example is the board is required to do a heavy amount of training within a certain time frame after being seated on the board. Part of the amendments was to reduce that and to extend the timeline. So that was one of the things that was important to a lot of the board members in the last round back at the early part of the 2025. Just about the time commitment needed to do the required training was extensive. And so just recognizing, okay, let's pare that back a little bit. That might increase interest in serving on the board if we can make that a little bit more reasonable for volunteers. And there's many other things like that. I mean, if the board were to review a case, that takes time, and it takes the ability of the board to come together, establish a set meeting time, and work during that meeting to review that case. So another big thing that is relevant to the investigations is the board cannot compel officer testimony. This has been a continual sticking point about investigations because it is hard to say that the board can do an independent and full investigation if it can't ask questions of the defendant in this case of the allegations, which is the officer, because the complaints are being made against the officer. It's also very clear in the policies of the police department, state law, that an officer has that right. So the board, it's hard to say that the board has a legitimate ability to recommend discipline if it can't interview that officer. And so this is an area where there are real limitations that have to be discussed, and City Council has expressed the continued desire to meet with the board to discuss how these challenges might be resolved and to work through amendment changes to the ordinance that could reach a good conclusion. So I'll go into a little bit of that later, but that is a big one, so I did want to hit it. Another limitation is the actual day-to-day work is performed by the office. As of right now, it's me. You're looking at the office. And so technically the office is budgeted for 2 individuals. As of right now, it's just 1, and we'll see where that goes. The investigation timeline, this is important too, because the police department and an officer have a very specific timeline if they're going to be investigated and if discipline is going to be used if that investigation is sustained. So if the board is going to engage itself in that timeline to recommend discipline, it has to follow the set timeline of the police department. That's hard for a board that meets only once a month. So that's a key thing. No discipline. Yep, Paul, sorry.
Yeah, so you're mentioning we meet once a month. That's, I know a lot of people have given a lot of criticism to that line, and that's the minimum that we all meet as a board a month, right? But I think it's important to note that we're also capable of having smaller meetings or forming additional meetings as well, just so that people don't assume that that's the maximum amount that we're allowed to meet a month. I don't know if you had a note on that, but just wanted to clarify that for anyone who might be thinking otherwise.
There's been a discussion in the past from the board about forming committees. A committee would be 3 members, because once a committee is formed, that committee is conducting official business, and so that would be kind of like a publicly noticed, anytime that committee meets, public notice, and that committee would have a specific purpose that it brings up to the board. That is 100% possible.
Ms. Walker, if I could add to Dr. Dobson's comment, it's also important, I think, that people know that the chair, the vice chair, and the director, the acting director, meet weekly and are in, if not daily communication, several times a week communication about board matters. A lot of it's in the weeds, the stuff we may end up bringing to the full board. Doesn't necessarily need to involve the full board to meet weekly, but we are I mean, it's not as though we're just showing up once a month and running through an agenda. We're meeting regularly.
Correct, and that's a good clarification. Yeah, the three of us have been meeting weekly, just to kind of keep the flow going, to keep the work on the back end going, and to help set the stage for the board as a whole, especially once we re-achieved quorum.
Yeah.
And there's no, like you were saying, there's no limit on how much the board can meet and do work. It's just within the context of, if it's 3 members, then we have to make sure it's a given public notice, the community is aware of it, and can access that work if they want.
And in addition, just speaking as acting chair and now chair, I mean, I don't want to unnecessarily impose on the schedules and times of the full board, knowing that people are volunteering here and that it's a commitment, and, you know, unnecessary meetings, I think, are off the table.
Yeah.
For that very reason.
And that's why it's up there as a limitation, because
It is
it's
a limitation.
it's hard to get everybody together. Everyone has
And I don't
very
want to ask
busy
if it's
schedules.
not, you know, if it's not something
Critical.
that really needs the full board's attention, so just want to have that on the record. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
This is what I prefer, because you know me, otherwise I'll just keep talking, because that's how I am.
Don't keep interrupting.
No discipline without internal affairs. I list that because the way that the policies of the police department, there is a collective bargaining agreement, there's a couple other things that tie into this. If an officer is going to receive discipline for a sustained allegation, then that process has to go through internal affairs. So even if the board did an independent investigation, which it could do, if that officer is meant to be disciplined upon a sustained finding, that process would still have to go through internal affairs. And so if you think about it, that would be basically dual investigations, but the board's investigation wouldn't contain all of the elements of the internal affairs investigation. And that is ultimately what's needed for the chief to give out discipline. So that's an important consideration to think about as we think about recommendations or thoughts about how the ordinance might need to change to better match what the board is trying to accomplish. And that's a rightful reason. So, I mean, if an officer is going to receive discipline, then there are a lot of legal ramifications related to that. There are grievance procedures that the officer can follow after receiving discipline as well. So there's a big complex nature to the investigation component and the discipline component. One of the other limitations is manuals and documentation. The current ordinance lays out a variety of other documents that have to be created. Some of those exist, some of those do not. But the question is, how many of those need to exist or don't need to exist? That's something that the board can discuss and try to figure out. And then there are limitations, practical and reasonable ones, about criminal cases. The board doesn't touch criminal investigations, or civil where the courts are involved, or juvenile cases. So we could get a complaint that comes related to a juvenile, but that's a little bit separate from like an actual juvenile-related court case. And if we would discuss that if a complaint came in that related to that, and we could get advice from the city attorney's office to know what we can and can't follow. So that's kind of my overview of the duties of the board. My next slide's on the duties of the office. If any other questions on this one? Okay. And again, we can do as much discussion at the end. Duties of the office. So as stated in the ordinance, the office is intended to intake and monitor complaints. I will share that there was two complaints that came into our office specifically in October. Both of those complaints were referred to the Internal Affairs Department, who are investigating both complaints. I'm able to monitor those. I'm able to attend the interview of the officer and observe that interview, and just keep track of what the status of that complaint is. I can communicate with the complainant and make sure they're being able to facilitate and communicate back and forth with Internal Affairs, just ensure they're being walked through the process so they understand what's happening. Part of the CPD use of force review. So one of the other big items is that anytime there is a use of force,
Sorry. Is the process, the complaint comes through and it goes to Internal Affairs, the office, and the board? Or is it that it goes through and then it goes to Internal Affairs and then they decide where it goes after that?
So if a complaint comes into the office,
Mhm.
I would actually track it in our system, and that's a system that we have that you've asked me to talk about. It might be for the next meeting or,
Okay,
or
yeah.
another night because of what we have on tonight.
Yes.
But I do track that one. I consider that one of our complaints, but it does get shared directly with Internal Affairs. If a complaint comes into Internal Affairs, they initiate it, but they send me the complaint. So they make me aware that a complaint has been made through them. I don't track it the same way in our system, but I track that they have a complaint. I attend those interviews at times. But it
It's
didn't
not
come in through
automatic
us.
though. It's not like if it goes to the internal affairs email or whatever their system is, it's not like it bounces straight to
It's
the
not
office.
automatic.
Okay.
And part of that is because it comes in through different formats. So a complainant can walk in to the front of the police department and issue a complaint. They can write it on paper. They can send it through an email. They can do a phone call. There is an online form that Internal Affairs has, and that goes to Lieutenant Vaya, who's the commander of Internal Affairs. But anytime he gets one of those, he emails that over to me. So I keep a log and a track of all those that come in.
And I think it's worth saying that, and maybe you're going to get to this, Mr. Walker, but the office is really the hub, and we're the spokes, the board is the spokes. And that said, you would also keep us apprised of that process, us being the chair and the vice chair, and then the larger board is needed as you monitor those cases. Because, what we can do is take a look at one if we deem that appropriate, and we'll talk about that more in the future. But I didn't want folks to think that we weren't involved in that process.
Well, and I think that's what the board with quorum can determine how it wants to receive that information,
Yes.
when it wants to receive that information, in what format. Right now, it's kind of been about a monthly report, kind of a monthly check-in of, hey, we've gotten these complaints, here's the status of them. But if the board wants to receive that in a different way, as they come in, letting the board know, or if the board would prefer the office just highlight certain ones that may be of more relevance than others, that is going to be for the board to determine.
And we will do that.
Yeah, and that's
not tonight, but but I would also just note that were we to do that and decided to look at a case as the full board, we would need to go into closed session because of confidentiality issues, and there are provisions for us to do that under FOIA and the other privacy guidelines. So just so folks know, those are not going to be public sharing of information. They would be shared in closed session with all the limits of confidentiality that the board is bound by.
correct, and that's an aspect of this is, let's say the board wanted to review a case from Internal Affairs. The board could enter closed session, review those materials which the office would prepare and provide in a meaningful way, whether that's body cam footage or the officer's interview with Internal Affairs, other case files related to that investigation, that Internal Affairs investigation. The board would review all that in closed session. The board could then come out of closed session and make generalized recommendations that don't give officer or witness names, that don't give the specific details, but provide recommendations related to policy or discipline if it's done within the window of time. Then the board could do that.
Yeah.
So it's more about us, and part of the conversation tonight is the board thinking about the best process it wants to go with for how it engages with that information.
Yeah. And let me just add for the full board that having spent some time early in my tenure on PCOB looking at hours of body cam footage, I've asked Mr. Walker to create a model whereby he would sort of give us a summation, give us just the relevant section of the body cam footage that bears on the complaint, a summary of the record, so that we aren't all spending hours and hours and hours doing that. And then you would give us a summary, and if we needed more information, we could certainly ask for it. But I don't want to leave the impression with the board that we're the ones going to be looking at hours and hours of body cam footage, because it's just endlessly boring, except for the critical part.
And to be fair to Internal Affairs, if the board is reviewing an investigation conducted by Internal Affairs, they already do a first round of that process, because Internal Affairs is basically creating a case file in their system and saying, here's the relevant video footage that's relevant to this case. And that way I could pull from those items to be able to find the exact pieces that would need to be reviewed by the board.
Yeah. Well said, thank you.
So yeah, that is an effective process. If you think about it from the perspective of you could probably review 10 cases in the time it would take to investigate one. Simply because of the nature that the investigation's already been done for you, so.
And just keeping in mind, in no way does this suggest we're going to be reviewing every single case that comes through. That would just be absolutely impossible in terms of the sheer numbers. Would you not agree, Mr. Walker?
It's possible, depending on the extent of your review, but what makes more sense would be specific types of cases that touch specific policies. Because let's say a policy related to vehicle pursuits and how vehicle pursuits are done. That might be more relevant than a policy related to just maybe a general unprofessionalism or something. That could be something we look at too, but you're gonna have to pick and choose, because if you wanna review every case, there's probably about 5 or so a month.
Yeah, that we'd want to prioritize, because things like, discourteous behavior, I mean, those might not be a good use of our time, because there are general orders within the department for handling that. And unless it really rose to an extreme level, just a run-of-the-mill complaint about that may or may not be something we would want to get involved with, whereas lots of other stuff we might.
Or something like courtesy that's an example of something that could be collectively done. So let's take, the last quarter, the last 3 months of courtesy related cases. Let's review them all together at one time.
And make a policy
as a topic
recommendation.
related to courtesy, and look at all of them.
Yeah.
So that could be a way to do it, rather than like a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Could do that for certain types of cases, but you could also look at a collection of the same topic of cases.
It was my impression when we looked at some statistics that those were a high number of the complaints fall under that heading. Is that your recollection?
There are a good number of them. I would need to pull the data to specifically.
Don't hold me to that. But that was
annual,
my...
and we're talking about data that I remember from 2024 versus the current year data is different.
Yeah.
But that's something that if the board wanted me to bring that information to you and us to go over that and then make a determination of what to do, we can do that.
Not to jump ahead to a lot of different things that we might be talking about, but while we're on this subject, I've just been writing some notes of things that I think we should eventually talk about. And one of them, I think, is just really clarifying terms and words. It's one of the frustrating things for me whenever I'm looking over any policy or just about anything, is the lack of clarity in terms when it comes to definition, but also in terms of operationalization. When I say that, just to define that term, what I mean is how are we measuring it, how are we observing it, how are we seeing it? So if we have a description of what we mean by courtesy that is public and transparent and clear for the public to see and to criticize, and we also have our operationalization of that. How are we measuring that? How are we looking at that? Then that also gives a lot of critique from the public to be able to come in and say, I actually think the way you're seeing courtesy is very culturally sort of narrow, and that you should actually broaden it towards a lot of other ways that people see courtesy, right? Which would be a fantastic critique, and one that may be encapsulated by the board, but it also might be better encapsulated through people who are not on the board as well. And so I just think that if we can channel a way to not only have almost this glossary of terms that we have publicly available that people can almost just hover over and see or click and see, oh, this is what they mean by courtesy. This is how they implement courtesy. This is how they keep people accountable for courtesy. Or here's even some examples of how they've kept people accountable in the past, that might feel very inviting to the public who wants to feel like they can engage in both criticism but also appreciation for the process.
Great point. Thank you. Excellent.
And that's where it would be relevant to review the police department's policy on how do they define courtesy,
it? Yeah.
and being able to compare and contrast how the board or the community would define it. So to keep moving on this, just to wrap this up.
Yes.
Oh yeah, sure.
I would be curious to see some data about the relative frequencies of various types of violation.
That, I think we can
I
get
do
that.
have that from 2024. I don't have that from 2025, but I could
we
prepare
can get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was amazed at this data sharing session that some of us went to, that the amount of data they collect over there. I mean, there's we can get a lot of data out of there. Now, whether it helps with what Dr. Dotson was saying, we can certainly get that, Andrew. Yeah.
It would just be helpful for me to have
Yeah,
context.
no, I agree.
Agreed.
So I'm gonna set that item aside as something the board potentially wants to
Yeah.
vote that you guys want to look into, because that will help facilitate my ability to produce that for you.
Right.
We can set that aside, and I have it noted,
You have
or
it
someone else
noted? Okay,
noted,
good.
yeah. So with use of force, and this is where I was gonna mention another really relevant thing, is the office is involved in the way that use of force is reviewed. So use of force could contain anything like the deployment or just the pulling of a weapon. So if the officer has to draw their weapon, draw their taser, utilize
Draw their baton.
I don't know if, I guess they do have batons, but that's
They
very
do,
rare
they
that they
do.
pull them out. The spray is more common, the OC spray. Or this also involves things like the canine or a vehicle pursuit. Those types of things may or may not be part of an internal affairs investigation because they could be entirely within policy and there's no complaint related to them. But they still go through a review process that could become an investigation. But this office sits as part of that review process and gives an opinion. So there's times when the office sees or engages with an incident that could be relevant to the board to review as part of that example. And that's within the board's authorized powers to do that, to review use of force.
So just for clarity,
Mhm.
use of force is always reviewed even when there is no complaint filed.
Correct.
Correct.
Yep. It goes up through a chain of command in the department. It goes up through usually, I think it's a sergeant, and then the lieutenant, a captain, and
Deputy
then assistant
chief,
chief.
Yeah.
The panel, which includes internal affairs, myself, and usually a specialist in the area. So like it might be a specialist in the firearms, if it's a firearm situation, and then it goes to the chief at the very top. And the chief is able to then look at all the different opinions on that and whether it was within policy or not, and make a determination. So there is some insight for the board into that through the office where the board could review something like that as well. And those really might determine policy because that whole process is looking at whether that was within compliance or not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, are you able to kind of create a system or suggest a system where if you are getting pulled into all of those cases, that you could also pull one of the members of the PCOB into it to be a part of kind of like your judgment of this? Or is that something that there's been hard lines to say no?
That's a conversation we could have with the chief. Right now, though, the way that the general order is written, it involves the office members as the one that accesses that.
Yep.
In a situation like that, the board would need to vote to say that we want to review this. That doesn't prevent the office from saying, hey, here's one to review. And so that's why we would have to work that out. Those are details that would need to be worked out on how that would work.
But I love that line of thinking where we're looking at, sort of how to expand our portfolio and have more input. I mean, I'm remembering those of you that weren't on the board a year or so ago, and you remember this, Mr. Walker, that there was concerns about the use of dash cam footage in traffic and moving violations. And the old policy was that the camera didn't come on until after they hit their lights. So the infraction has occurred, the officer hits his lights and siren, and then the dash cam comes on. So the actual violation was never recorded. And then that set up disputes between the person who got the ticket and the officer. So we had input on that, and they adjusted the policy. So now that as soon as they detect an infraction, I think the camera goes on now. Is that not the case?
There's a delay in the sense that
But it's a 30-second.
it's like 30 seconds
yeah,
back, so
backwards.
it actually
But it's an
captures
improvement
back.
over the
Yes.
system.
So like that's something that could be looked at if things are being missed. But yeah, it's
And
from
that's
a
the kind of
moment.
thing where we can get involved
Exactly.
and have a say in that, and at least have input to the department and say, we think you need to take a look at this policy. And so far, I think they've been receptive.
I think the 30 seconds, I believe, was implemented
was an
from the
outcome of that,
recommendation.
yeah. So anyway, just.
So there's a lot of different examples. All in all, the purpose of this office is to support the board in its authorized purpose. So the board determines what its work and goal and purposes are within the framework of the ordinance, and the office is meant to support that. Obviously, there's a lot of administrative stuff that the office has to do day to day. Managing the budget is one thing, and providing reports to the board as the board requests. That would be an example of like, hey, provide a report on what do all the complaints look like? What are the different types of allegations being made? What is most common? Things like that. Just some of the limitations, obviously limited staff and resources with one person right now. Sometimes there is an unclear role as it relates between the office and the board. That's something that we've been working to amend in the ordinance to make that clarification more explicit. And then this is what we've been talking about, lack of direct priorities from the board. So if the board sets priorities of what it wants to accomplish, that makes the office's job easier, so that the office can follow suit and be able to meet that board need. There's a lot of words on here, but it's just talking about the time of transition with momentum. So the board has undergone periods of progress and setback. As many know, gain and loss of members, of office leadership, varying levels of engagement. And a lot of that goes back to a lack of clear expectations of the board and an ordinance that matches those expectations. I think there has been a very clear recognition of that, and why I say momentum is there is a lot of effort and engagement in starting to address that process, starting to address the ordinance, and make it realistic and make the expectations clear. So there's been a lot of progress over the past months, starting with that joint meeting with City Council, and they've expressed publicly an interest to have another joint meeting with the board, especially once it reached quorum and could give its opinions and recommendations as a board. But also just to enhance that transparency to the community and continue to receive community feedback in whatever ways that we can. We've been discussing some of that behind the scenes of additional ways to get community input and feedback and ways to listen to the community. So the board must establish priorities with the input gained from the community to set a path and meet those expectations and recommendations to the ordinance. So that the board's conversations, discussion, and opinions are going to be what directs the ship.
When do you think it's appropriate for us to start talking about some of those elements?
I think tonight, once I'm finished, and I will say I apologize, I meant to mention this earlier. The monthly report from the PCOB office, I just decided to not include that because I knew this would take the amount of time that it would.
Yes.
And we'd hit many of the topics that would be in that anyways. Yeah. What I'd much rather prefer is the board say what direction they want to go to.
Item 7, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that last one. So I did keep this as short as possible. The current strengths. The PCOB has an unprecedented amount of access to police records and data through the office. So the chief has been very supportive in that way. He has stated many times that, when he talks to other chiefs in the region, they can't believe how much access this office and the board are given to police data. So that transparency is a core strength of the board.
Yes.
And that allows the board to provide that oversight and accountability. And it's just a matter of the board engaging in that work. So, for example, we have access to things like the body cam footage, other police records like the general reports of the police call system of how police receive and respond to calls. We also have access to the flock camera system, which has been discontinued at this time until that's determined what's happening with that, but it is discontinued right now, but we have had access. And other systems and data like that. We can request case files from internal affairs and get that case file. So those are some examples. There is an expansive authority, as we've just been describing. The board has a lot of leeway in the ordinance. Yes, there are limitations. Yes, there are barriers that exist. But generally, the board is able to look at many aspects of the police department. And then there is a clear commitment from City Council to continue working towards a model of oversight. So the conversation with City Council is related to the models of oversight, and they want to understand the board's perspective. That's what they've been sharing about the next joint meeting, to get the board's perspective on what does the board see as its role in oversight. NACOL is the National Organization for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. They lay out 3 models. There's an investigation model, audit, monitor, model, review model. The way that the ordinance is written right now, it allows the board to do all of those. But it allows the board to do all of those without a lot of clarity and definition. So the goal for the board is to really think about, and I can provide more detail on these, but to provide more details on which direction is the board really seeking to go, and provide that recommendation to City Council, because that will help them set that tone as well.
Yeah. No, I think one of the priorities I want us to undertake is deciding which model we want, and then communicating that through you to council and through the city manager, so that they know our preference. I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do. They have the final authority. But I would want us to have pretty clear input on that and not just leave it to their discretion.
And I think, so, not that I think, the board, once you have an official vote on things, those types of recommendations or decisions, that can go directly to City Council.
Yeah.
Your audience is City Council. It can also be the city manager, myself, the chief of police. The board is authorized to once it makes a recommendation and a vote, can send that off to whoever it chooses.
Although I think it would add some gravitas to the recommendation if we had the chief's buy-in and the city manager's buy-in, once we come up with a clear recommendation for the model we'd like to. The reason we have not had a single hearing in my 4.5 years on the board, or even since the inception of the board, is because of all the barriers that exist, legal, procedural, bureaucratic. And I think the public is understandably, wonders what we're doing since we've held no hearings. So it has to be a model that really shows that we're fulfilling our job to provide oversight function on the complaints. So just for the board to think about that as we move forward.
And I think I have like one last slide.
Okay, please.
No, one last slide, and that's the question slide, but that really gets into the discussion. So priorities, which we were just talking about, one of the priorities that the board does need to have is about reviewing and providing commentary on the ordinance, with a focus on clarifying the role of the board, the office, and the outcomes produced in service to the community. So what does the board seek to produce as its outcomes? Recommendations, input on things. The board is going to help determine where direction that goes in as it comes to defining what that says in the ordinance. So setting a clear work plan for the board with priorities and tasks. So how do we go about accomplishing those things? What work does the board need to do? What tasks does the board need to do? And that helps define what the office would need to do. And finally, how do we engage the community at a deeper level, both to listen to the needs and desires of the community, but also help to clarify the powers and duties of the board as they stand today? So
Right.
those are what I had kind of perceived as the priorities of the board at this moment. And then my last slide was just questions. If anything, the goal was to transition then into the last item on the agenda before we get to public comment, which is the board discussing any of these topics or the topics listed there on the agenda, and where the board really wants to go from here.
Questions for Mr. Walker or the whole board? Anyone?
I'm curious about the crisis intervention team training.
CIT.
Since I've been retired, I don't know if that's still going on. Tom Van Hemmer used to do that.
Yep.
And,
I think he's still doing.
Still doing it?
Yeah.
is he? Okay.
Sorry.
We have a CIT
No, it's-
coordinator at Region 10 who's actually to a certain extent took Tom's role, but Tom is continuing his connection as well.
Okay.
Is that person in your shop doing the training, Andrew?
She participates in the training,
Participates.
as do a number of other people from emergency, depending on the situation.
Were you saying that from the perspective of that? Is that something that you'd be interested in,
I was looking at.
the board as a whole?
I was just curious if it's still going on and in what capacity, because I'm out of the loop mostly, being retired.
I honestly don't know.
My understanding is that they have retained crisis intervention training regularly. I don't remember what exactly their retaining of that's supposed to be, but I have talked to Tom recently and continue to enjoy his perspectives. But I think he's situated within UVA now, so I think he's he might be more focused towards their emergency and crisis. But my understanding is that the Charlottesville Police Department is still receiving crisis intervention training and probably doing kind of refresher courses of some sort.
I don't know to what extent refresher trainings are happening. I do believe that it's the expectation that sooner or later all of the officers will get through it. More of them go through sooner rather than later.
Okay.
There are specific questions people could call Kelly Royston, who's our CIT person now at Region 10.
Good to know.
I feel like we should, not to nominate tasks for us already, but I do feel like that feels like an incredibly important thing for CPD to all be trained on.
Feels that
And
way
I
to
think
me.
that's the expectation, isn't it, Andrew, that they're all
That's generally the expectation.
trained? I mean, I've heard younger officers talk about getting ready or getting
I
queued
think
up
that,
to go.
honestly, I think everyone should be trained on it and should be refreshed on it and practicing it constantly, even whenever they don't see someone who's in crisis. I think it's an incredibly important thing to do with just about anyone.
You know, just
Yeah.
since the chief has been here, he implemented the anchor teams. Is that what they're called? Andrew?
Yes.
Yeah, which consists of 2 teams of an officer, a specially trained officer, an EMT, and a mental health worker that respond to folks that are known to be having a mental health crisis. And it doesn't replace CIT, but it supplements it. And I'm going to actually meet with Sergeant Shiflett on Monday just to get briefed on that. But they, do you know more about that, Andrew? Do you would add anything to what the anchor team's doing?
It gets a little blurry in my mind, the distinction between what Anchor is doing and what HART, which is the parallel team in Albemarle County, is doing.
Yes, definitely.
But they're definitely bringing people in crisis to the main Region 10 office on Old Linford Road.
Right.
And it's a less stressful way of approaching some of the crises. That produces better results in the sense of, when appropriate, more people get to go home rather than getting hauled off to the hospital, and it helps people avoid the whole "you're already in a crisis and the police drag you to the hospital" when it's reasonable to do so. There are certainly situations where we can't do that.
Okay.
If we can't do a medical clearance if we don't know whether somebody's acting this way because they have, for instance, an uncontrolled urinary tract infection, which can produce psychiatric symptoms. We can't assess that at our main office.
But I think one of the beauties of it is that they're not taking everybody to the ER. They're taking them down to Region 10. And I mean, I'll know more on Monday, but just the brief interaction I've had with Sergeant Shiflett is that, they're busy.
And we're also moving closer to a point where we're going to have some 23-hour
Wow.
capability. Bring people in and we're able to hold them or have them stay for up to 23 hours.
That's great.
We're getting a machine that will allow us to have a limited supply of medications available, if that would be a useful tool for a particular situation. They're actively remodeling the space at this point in time.
It might be something that the board would ask someone to do a brief presentation to us at one of our meetings, just and we could ask questions. And because I do think it's the part. I mean, it's part of the interface of the CPD and the community, a very vulnerable part of the community, but one in which we might want to have some oversight, just to do a check-in.
I would like to flag, though, just thinking about our authorities and stuff, these are joint teams of visits, EMT and social services as well, and we would not have oversight of them, so there might.
Well, it's
These,
under the police department. It's
So the entire of
the anchor
teams
thing is a
under-
police department initiative.
There's not that many
There's 2
members of
teams.
it.
There's
Yeah.
6 people altogether.
Is that the same in the county?
I don't know the county model. Do you know, Andrew? Is it similar model?
It's similar. There's an officer, of one of the fire marshals, and then there's mental health people on the team as well.
Okay, that's the model.
The county team might also include some work with Partners for Mental Health, and I'm not sure to what extent the city's incorporated that.
I'll find out on Monday, but, yeah. So anyway, it's just another initiative that I think is long overdue in Charlottesville, and I'm pleased about. But again, we might want to take a look at it.
Yeah, and that, so I wrote that down as a possible presentation.
Yes.
Regarding Anchor.
Yep.
And figuring out who the best person is to present that.
Sergeant Johnson, Eric Johnson, he oversees both teams.
Okay.
He's one of the community officers.
Thomas, Sergeant Eric Thomas?
Yeah,
or-
Thomas, what did I
okay.
say, Johnson? I'm terrible with names. Eric Thomas, yes. And he's under Lieutenant Wade.
Yeah, I can reach out to him and ask him,
I talked to him about it
when we were at the,
at Carver, yeah.
oh, okay.
So Anchor's actually housed in the Department of Human Services. It's not, even though there's police officers on.
Oh, is that
That's-
true? Okay,
yes.
nice
Right,
to
that's
know.
what I was thinking.
Yeah.
is that-
Thank you, stand corrected on that. Didn't know.
But that's where a presentation on
But
the
still,
topic could be of
worth
value.
knowing about it. Correct those misperceptions.
I did get confirmation from Lieutenant Vi, he was texting me really quick about, so all officers are required to do 1 week full of the CIT training. They have them several times a year, but all officers are required.
Do they have
to attend
refreshers,
those.
or is that just a one-shot deal?
That I'm not sure of. I don't know if it's a rolling on an annual basis or not. They do go through that 1 week training.
I think there's a certification, isn't there, that
Mhm.
complete?
So are we in just kind of the open conversation part of the?
Yeah, item 7, yeah.
Yeah.
James, were you done? Can we go to item 7?
Yeah, I'm done. That last page, all it was just me just starting to kind of create some little template of ideas that could go into a work
Yeah.
plan. And just think about how we might fill this in or scrap what's in there and fill it in
You're already
differently.
filling it
There you go.
as we speak.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I was just starting to make some ideas, but we've already talked about some of these things. I was also just filling them in. I think, I can see so many different ways that we can move forward. So I'm almost overwhelmed in a certain way. However, we've talked about a couple of things that I think are incredibly important, which are getting understanding of the community's experiences. That's just a broad goal, but I think that the way that most people here know me as is I'm going to take a data-driven, evidence-based approach to doing that. What does that mean from my perspective? Well, it means talking to people. So it doesn't mean necessarily just sending digital things to people and having them get surveyed that way. It sometimes could mean walking up to people's doors, or it could mean going into public places where a lot of people where they convene and really doing a lot of work, honestly, and reaching out to people and talking to them with a one item open question about what their experience has been with the Charlottesville Police Department, and then really listening, taking notes, and really trying to standardize that process as best as we can and make sure we can kind of map out where have we been, have we gotten to everywhere equally, what are the concerns of each of these areas, and then hopefully from that information being able to follow up with appropriate oversight of police in those areas, right? And so if we're taking that, sorry to just yammer on, but if we're taking that inductive approach to doing this, then what we do from there is we now understand here's a particular region where people feel like courtesy is at a low, or respect is at a low, trust is at a low, whatever it is, we can hone in on that specific challenge or problem, perhaps by looking at what are the specifics there. Is it that there have been a few cases that have been problematic? Is it that people just feel unsafe and they didn't like the approach of police whenever their safety concerns were vocalized? Is it that is it because there's they have a different view of what flock means, right? And license plate readers mean from that within that area than other areas? We can understand that, and then we can take some of these approaches that we've discussed so far of going over policy or reviewing policies or looking at reviews of particular footage or whatever it is. But I think starting from the community first, hearing what their concerns most are with a very systematic approach, and then deciding how we approach what we prioritize on a month-to-month basis feels like it could be a really good method for not putting ourselves first, not putting the police first, but putting the community first, and making sure that we're holding the police accountable for what the community's concerns are.
I like that a lot.
I do too.
And I think positives. I mean, I've seen
Yes.
some amazing police work with mental health crises.
Yeah.
It's just really exceptionally well done.
Me too. And that's another big part of what I really hope we're able to do, is to not only just shine the light on some of the things that are a little less pleasant, but also being able to shine the light on exceptional work, because one way to not incentivize exceptional work is to ignore it.
Mhm.
And so if we just are only focusing on the negatives, then I don't think that's going to be very motivational for the folks who are trying their hardest. So I really do think that kind of approach, like I was describing, I think what that will do is it'll help people understand there's a cadence as well to, okay, every month we're going to be out there constantly trying to learn about what are the biggest concerns. Then from there, we're going to meet, we're going to talk about this, we're going to figure out what concerns should we be focusing on for this month. And then we're going to take this multi-pronged approach towards focusing on whether it's courtesy or whatever, mission-aligned thing we should be focusing on, and we'll do that with whatever tools we have at our disposal. Some months, perhaps it's not going to make sense for us to look at body-worn camera footage as much. Maybe some months it'll only be body-worn camera footage, right? But the idea is that we will take an approach that is rigorous towards looking at, and objective towards looking at the community's concerns when it comes to their public safety regarding police. That's kind of the view from my perspective.
And I think gun violence is a sticky one. I don't think anybody's figured that out yet, and that's certainly a community-based issue. I think that we could help with, maybe, or at least listen to.
Listen to.
Yeah.
But we do know some of the factors. One of the largest ones being, you may know this, is people leaving firearms in unlocked vehicles.
Right.
And especially, that's how, according to the chief, many young people are getting access to firearms. They're just checking cars, finding one open, finding a gun in there, and they're off to the races. And I know there's tremendous frustration in the department with just getting the message out to the public: lock your car, bring your firearm in the house, put it under lock. You're just contributing to this problem. So, I mean, there's lots of things where we can also help with the messaging, I think.
Yep. And I think there's minor things like traffic, like where I live in town, there's a guy that comes charging through the street with, young kids walking. It's a quiet street. He's loud and he's just obnoxious. I mean, he can be obnoxious, but he's dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? What can we do about that? Can we have better speed traps somewhere? Or if the community knows of a place where something's happening, can we notify them and get them involved in a way that's...
That's a great point, Albie. I just think, getting input on that and then bringing it back to the department, saying we're getting a lot of buzz about traffic enforcement in certain neighborhoods. It's just an excellent way to have it.
Yeah, and I think so again, I think that's the sort of thing that could come through in this model if we are going around and have a systematic approach of representing most of the public as best as we can, and then we can kind of coalesce a lot of those concerns. And let's say some of the biggest concerns that month, maybe it's the summer or something like that, and the biggest concerns that month are gun violence, or maybe the biggest concerns on another particular month are people driving around in a busy, whenever it's school's back in session, is okay, well, people are driving around really fast, right? Those are both technically police concerns that people could have problems with, right? The police are not addressing gun violence in the ways that they feel are appropriate, or they aren't addressing traffic concerns in the way that they're feeling appropriate. It also could just be a messaging issue of the police aren't getting their message out that they actually are going through and doing this, and here's how they've increased their patrols and all that, and we could still do this kind of investigation or review model to say, all right, we've looked at what the police are doing, here's what they say they're doing, here's what they're going to now try to communicate this to the public more, and also here's what the new approach they're going to take in the next month. And again, like I said, just rinse and repeat, and hopefully has something systematic that people aren't confused what the board is doing, but rather they know how to tap in whenever they have something they really want to say.
And apropos that, I think, is increasing our visibility in the community. I mean, getting our business cards and handing them out and just letting folks know how to reach us with concerns. I just think we've been too much under the radar with so much else going on and so many distractions just with all the transitions and resignations and so forth. I'd really like us to raise our profile and improve our messaging across the board in all respects. Because we each have communities we can plug into that are different. And I think we need to exploit that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Because I did want to address a little bit about the last item under item 7. Tyler, do you have anything else on?
I mean, I have so many things, but I'm not going to bring them up.
Okay, I mean, we've got time. I wonder, Mr. Walker, if we could ask of you to maybe come up with a summary of the potential models for the board for oversight and distribute it to the board for review, so that next month we could have a discussion and maybe a vote on which model we want to communicate to council that would be our choice.
Yeah, I think that would be a good.
Does that work for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
So at the next meeting, review the various models
Whatever
of
you sent
oversight.
out,
Yeah.
and
What that might imply, what that might
what
look
it
like.
looks
and
like,
then
what it entails,
the board can give a-
and let's try to formulate that in a way that avoids the barriers that we've been living with. A model that doesn't run up against the ordinance, doesn't run up against the union, doesn't run up against the bureaucracy, doesn't run up against Garrity or any of those other obstacles that have been in our way. Because I don't want to just keep fighting those battles.
Yeah, well, I mean, objectively, I just would want to provide kind of the full scope and just maybe lay out where those barriers exist and where
And if they
don't.
exist in any of the models,
Yeah.
let us know that, so we can decide whether we want to relitigate that or whether we want to, just move on to something that's not as contentious.
And that would prepare for any future joint meeting with city council.
Yes.
And the board to be able to speak to that.
Yes, and we could present them with our recommendation and why and the rationale for our recommendation, keeping in mind that they aren't going to have had access to the depth and breadth of what we do, what we bring to them. And so we're going to really have to be the messengers on that to them.
Yeah, and I had my comment was going to be more on, I'm trying to be operational without waiting on the monthly.
Yeah, exactly.
So my biggest thing is that I think we should consider even forming these subcommittees.
Yes.
And I wonder if even today we might be able to generate some of the ideas behind them, or even figure out what those subcommittees could be. I don't know.
Your thoughts?
That was kind of my goal with putting the board member roles and tracking. That was more about what roles does the board need to fill, and that could be the form of committee.
One that off the top of my head is public outreach.
Yeah, and it seems like
not
honestly,
that only those people would do it, but we would all be part of it. But they
That's
might
the
have the
people who are-
responsibility for sort of formulating a strategy for that.
And highlighting events and making sure the board's aware of the opportunities.
Exactly.
and how to tap into.
And maybe doing a little research on where certain segments of the community gather, where we can get access.
Yeah.
One of the things that Mr. Walker and I talked about is getting a list of the neighborhood associations. There's one, they're all over town. Each neighborhood has one, or most neighborhoods have them, and see if we can get a list of those so we can invite ourselves to their meetings. They don't always have huge turnout, but those are usually the movers and shakers in those neighborhoods. So there's lots of entry points here. Kyle, did you have other thoughts?
No, I just was going to say an overarching thought, which is I think that if we're able to right now kind of generate a few of these subcommittees, then that's good, because then that means that some of these people might be able to go start targeting some different tasks throughout the next month in their little subcommittee. But even if we aren't able to form an actual subcommittee, technically, if someone's like, I'll look into that, then that's one person at least that's starting to try to do that.
Did you have ideas for other
Oh,
categories?
yeah. So honestly, it's funny enough. I feel like James did some of the work for us already by
Yes.
putting some of these because these seem like the ones that are most top of mind.
That was what we talked about. in
Yeah,
our
we talked
meeting.
about it.
There, and that makes sense.
Those four.
So I feel like what you just mentioned
Yep.
is public relations and
Yep.
community engagement, and I think the tasks there would really be where do people gather,
Yep.
and
Access.
access, forming sort of some kind of like event like a place where we have a centralized, here's all the events that we're kind of putting together, which can inform the next thing, which I'm certainly interested in being a part of, the evidence-based data-driven review of policies, practices, and procedures. I think that is part of the way that we can really do that model that it seems like all of us here seem to like, a data-driven approach to understanding what the community really wants. And so if the we go around to these different community areas, or we can engage with the subcommittee that has given us these different areas within Charlottesville. We go to these, we ask our one question,
Yep.
and we just keep putting them into a central space.
Yep.
Then now we have a good system to say, all right, what's the thing that
Keeps
seems
popping
like
up.
people,
Yep.
yeah. And so I would love to put that system
Okay.
together. Anyone who wants to join me, feel free to reach
I don't know
out.
if it's realistic, if I could interrupt,
Please.
to have committees as opposed to just censors, only
There's not that many of us. It's just-
committees of one.
Yeah, that's kind of where I would be very interested in doing that. Anyone who wants to join
Which
me.
one, the first one?
The second one.
Second
that's what I
one,
was thinking. Yep.
And I'll jump in on policy and legal review of the board and CPD, because that's something James and I talk about all the time. Anyone interested in complaints, use of force, that sort of subset of stuff?
So I would love to join in on the policy review side of
Okay.
that,
You got
and
it.
so you can count me in to
Well, we'll
join.
talk
in.
about it on Mondays anyway.
Yeah.
Rory, do you have a,
Michael, question on policy and legal review, can you just speak to that a little bit more? Are we talking in terms of just like,
we're talking about that kind of
like
thing.
looking through what works, what doesn't work?
CPD policies,
And the
general
Charlottesville.
orders,
And what
on
about
both
this
sides.
idea that you had of a kind of glossary of terms?
I
That
did put
seems
that.
very interesting to me.
I didn't know
and
which one to put that in.
Which one was it?
To me, I think
glossary of
if we're talking about,
Glossary of terms.
if we're already talking about policy, if we're talking about what the law says,
That could be in.
Under
translating
policy.
that into plain English is
Okay.
a challenge,
feels
is
like
a
it.
task
Okay,
that
I'm gonna put that under that.
people need help with.
I think you should join.
And, yeah.
I'd be inclined to think that having a glossary so we're all working on the same page would be
Yes.
kind of a foundational step.
No, I think you're
And
right.
then we may have to reallocate or allocate tests differently based on how that turns
Yeah.
out.
And I think part of the
Yeah.
value of it
Priority.
is having a focus of this is a glossary for the community to use, rather than like, okay, maybe the police department's policies have all this in there. Fine, that's aimed towards police
Yeah,
officers.
not,
The community
and
aren't
for
gonna
us and the
understand it.
community,
Yep.
yeah.
That's
So
great.
that's my thought.
That's great. I love
Of
that.
not just kind of copying and pasting the definitions, but some
No,
translation work as
translate.
well.
I love that.
And refining them if we need to, I mean, as Kyle said.
And
courtesies
that
don't
goes
catch
into the review
Yeah.
policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So we already got, now that's an actual subcommittee because it's got 3 people.
all. And we can serve on more than one committee. Andrew, did you have a preference?
I'm flexible.
So I was looking at the operating procedures, which define the committees. So the subcommittee, a subcommittee, or I'm sorry, not a subcommittee, but a committee could be created from, I guess because there's technically committees and then subcommittees of those committees. I don't know why we would ever get
Sub
that,
it, but yeah.
it does say 2 or more members, so 2 members can be a committee. Now, one important note is that if the board votes to create a committee with a delegated purpose, the work of that committee is public
Public,
record as
yes.
part of that, even if it is only 2 members.
Yes.
So just generally, just think about that. We could also, the board could also kind of get the sense of like, let's formulate this and then maybe operationalize it at the next meeting, saying, here's what actually needs to be established, here's what can be just done by individual members.
Okay.
I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Because I just wanted to make sure we're reading the.
Yeah, I hear you on that because you're saying that if we were to, let's say, do something that involves 2 people, then now and decide we vote right like today that it's a committee that has XYZ purpose, Now, anytime those two people meet, it has to be public and it has to go through.
Or it's not that meeting of those two people have to be public, but the work that they do is foyable.
I
I
see.
mean,
publicly.
the alternate model
Does that
would
make
be
sense?
one person on each with input from whomever. I mean, not as a committee, just as board members, sharing perspective, sharing ideas about that category of stuff.
And I think that's, going back to, I think it was like last spring, we were talking about individual roles of the board, just kind of like a point person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
where-
that's what I'm voting.
I don't know if that would be an initial good step to say, hey, here's the point person for this, or this. And maybe it's determined that a committee is needed for something that
We
takes
could
more.
decide, but at least that would get us started and avoid some of the bureaucratic
Right,
Hardship.
baggage.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, if the biggest thing is a FOIA, that would
Yeah,
be
I
the,
don't think that's no concern for anybody.
yeah, I was gonna say, that doesn't feel frightening.
No, no.
You know, it's, I mean, we're talking about it right now,
Yeah.
openly, I think we want this to be a very transparent process in so many different ways. I just am trying to think if there's other things that I'd be, accidentally breaking, something in an ordinance, that would be unfortunate. If I were, let's say, meeting and it wasn't on, publicly available to people or announced certain
We don't
days
have to
ahead of.
post those small meetings, 3 or more we do.
Okay, got it. Got it.
I think as a new person, I think of police oversight is to find what you're doing wrong. And really, I think what we need to be is inviting the police to come and say, how can we help you? If we can. I mean,
Yeah.
they have a hard job.
Yeah.
But, and we're not, we're not really able to do but so much.
Right.
But the fact that we have the attitude that we want to collaborate and make it better, as opposed to looking for things that they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
And I think in some ways that's the current culture. I mean, we could do better at it, but I think,
I'm new, so I don't know.
yeah, no, I think that speaks to the cooperative relationship. I mean, yes, we have alternative goals sometimes, but it doesn't have to be adversarial. Under the prior leadership of the department, it was just, everything was a battle.
Right.
There was nothing forthcoming. There was just a thick wall between the board and the leadership of the department. And this has been a refreshing change, and a welcome change.
He's a collaborator.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and not to switch us back to the committees too abruptly, but
Please.
I'm just trying to think about this, because I really do want to vote on this if possible,
Okay.
if we think it's appropriate. But in the case, and this is more of a question for James, so in the case that the committees are voted on, is this something that, what is the benefit of that versus, from your perspective? Is it that now this is publicly available and it's also, it needs to be voted on to take them out? And so it's kind of a good longevity sort of plan to say, we value these 3 or 4 things. We think that they should exist within the PCOB, and until we, as the PCOB, do not think it is, they will remain.
Well, one caveat is,
Yeah.
My preference would be that we individually
Yeah.
express a preference, because we're gonna have new members presumably
Yeah.
coming on board, and I'd like to
True.
wait for that to
That's a
give
good
them
point.
an opportunity and so maybe have point people at this point
That's a good
rather than
point.
committees.
I like that.
And I do want to correct something I just stated, because I'm reading the policy as we're talking. So our operating procedures do clearly say committee, subcommittee, or working group of 2 or more, and these are compliant with FOIA's open meeting requirements.
Okay, see,
So that would be considered an open meeting,
that's more
and that's
bureaucracy.
different than the current status of a non-official committee. I think what you're asking is, what is the benefit of committee?
Yeah.
Well, the benefit of a committee would be, I guess, to kind of formalize that role and those recommendations
Yeah.
that are being worked on by a smaller subset of the group. So
But the full board can do that.
they could, or smaller collections of 1 or 2 members could work on things
Yes.
and present it to the board or
Yeah.
provide it to the board.
I
But-
think,
Yeah, with new members coming
Yeah.
too, that could also be.
We have 2 factors going on, which I think might make it premature to look at forming committees, and one of which is we still got 2 open slots, and the other of which is we're going into the holidays.
mhm.
People are gonna be busy.
Good point, Andrew.
Not that I want to slow things down,
No,
but
no,
I'd
no,
rather
I
do it
mean-
right than do it twice.
Yeah. I agree with you on
I
that.
mean,
too.
I think there's a sort of a pent up, you know, we've
Yeah,
sort
oh,
of been
yeah.
in the
100%.
starting gate here for 5 months, and so some of us are feeling some push from that, but I agree, your point's well made.
However, I do think that I will just still stay on as, I mean, I'm doing this kind of work generally in my
Yeah,
day
no, no,
job
no.
anyway, so it's already on my mind.
Okay.
That, yeah, I think especially if I take the approach of, I'm gonna do this, and anyone else who wants to join and help out, feel free. And then I will present what I have done on the, like, in the background, to the board. You know, when it comes to, let's say,
You talk about the
evidence-based.
data-driven part.
Yeah, that's just one of them. I mean, I would also do the policy and legal review part too. I just really like, you know, getting into this and working.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I maybe for now, I'll just openly say that
Okay.
I would love to be the point person for the evidence-based part.
Okay.
And I don't know if Jeff, you feel comfortable just penciling in your name for the policy and legal.
Yeah, absolutely do.
Yeah.
Albie, do you have a preference?
I'm thinking, I'm kind of on another track.
Okay, sorry.
I'm thinking of us getting to know each other a little bit better,
Okay.
and what our backgrounds are, and how we can work together collaboratively most efficiently.
So maybe wait on some
Well-
decisions. I mean, no, that's fair. I mean, I don't know, Andrew, do you?
I think we'll get a better product
Okay.
if we know each other better.
You
I mean,
agree?
to be fair, our two new members are being kind of thrown into the middle of
Yeah, I
things,
know,
and-
into the
and
middle
it's hard to keep up
months
with
of-
it. One
Well, and
thing,
in terms of maintaining the interest of a potential new member,
Yes.
6 or 7 on the board,
No, good point.
we don't want to necessarily shut down avenues because they're already overstaffed,
Mm.
adequately staffed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point.
So let's just table this.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we can't start working on it individually, thinking about it, but.
one of the
my-
things I heard from the group, especially Dr. Dobson, and maybe this is something that you would want to do if working on a series of community types of questions or a
Yeah.
strategy or a plan to go about that could be brought to the board at the next meeting to review and potentially vote on as an approved thing that the board would carry forward as its way of community listening, understanding. That way it could move that item forward in a meaningful way. The other item I had was bringing the models of
Yeah,
oversight
models of oversight.
to review and discuss. So that's at least two things that could be brought to the next board meeting that the board could at least discuss, if not also take action on.
Yeah. And it doesn't have, the board doesn't need to take action on it, but I would like to see if we can continue to try to get those neighborhood association contacts and just that directory. Somebody must have it. I don't know if MDS has it or James, but I don't know if you could ask Ms. Marshall if she knows, but if we could track that down. And any other collectives that meet,
I mean, it might be good to start forming kind of like a
list. Yeah,
of
absolutely.
different, I mean, there's all kinds of things.
All kinds of,
Yeah.
there's civic groups, there, the different, I mean, there's tons of groups
Yep.
that we might want to tap into, so, okay. All right, anything else on item 7? If not, I'll open it up for public comment. Is there anything else before we do that? Okay. Do we have anybody online?
We have one person online. Their hand is not currently raised. If you'd like to speak at this time, you can click the raise hand icon.
There's a 3-minute limit on comments.
Hand raised.
No go. Anyone here want to speak? Anyone present? Yes, ma'am.
I just had bunches of questions.
Okay.
And just maybe you just want to consider them, or if you know the answers to, you can answer them. So when we're talking about,
Would you be able to just introduce yourself and then
oh, sorry.
just state if you're a resident of the city or the county?
My name's Nat Reeves. I'm actually a Fluvanna County resident, but I work for the Department of Human Services for the city. So we were talking about the complaints that people make. I was just wondering if there's any way to track what the racial and socioeconomic makeup of those people that are complaining, and like what area of the city they live in.
Can you make a note of that, Mr. Walker, if we see if that data is available?
I can speak to that, but better if you go ahead and share your full set.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
Other question was, with Chief Conscious, we do have sort of unprecedented access to data, but if he were to leave, is that still going to be possible? Like, is there some policy written that the board has this ability to continue to look at, camera footage or whatever it is, or that just ends when he leaves? So
I think my understanding is, that policy is at his pleasure, and his successor, whether to be one, could reverse it.
Well, I can speak to
Please,
that in
James.
detail about the policy. Yeah.
Do you have other questions?
just the last one, you're talking about public outreach. What is the plan, or make sure you incorporate a plan to reach out to the immigrant communities?
Yes, for sure.
And that was really it.
Good point.
Okay.
Good. Yes.
Um,
Go ahead, James, if you will.
Yeah, just to speak clearly on those, just about tracking the ratio of the demographics of complaints received. So part of the complaint form process is for those who complain to self-identify those things. They can choose to, or whether they choose to or not. That includes things like they do have to provide an address. So we could create a map of where complaints are coming from based on address in the city. Whether or not they identify race, gender, that's up to them. So sometimes we do collect that data, and we do have that data. Sometimes we don't, and that's up to the complainant. The assumption of it would not be appropriate for the office to assume those things and fill in something randomly. So it's up to them. We do ask if they want to fill that information in, and that is part of that complaint process. So yes and no is the answer to that question. It is offered as a collected item, but not everyone has to fill that out. Then to answer the question about the change in chief. So there are two documents that are official kind of policy. One of them is called the Standard Operating Procedure. That is an agreement between the board and the police department. The board's ordinance does govern the need to have that document in place. However, that document is an agreement between the board and the chief. And so that document outlines the way that the board is able to access information from the department. So that's one aspect of it. There's another document called the Memorandum of Understanding. That defines how the board is able to access internal affairs and interviews of officers as part of that complaint process. So yes, these are somewhat dependent upon the relationship with the chief and that kind of back and forth between the board and the chief to work out the details. However, the thing that forces all of that to occur is the ordinance of the board. The ordinance does say that the board will have access primarily through the office to all of the records, files, and things that are needed for the board to conduct its authorized purpose. So it does get down into the details of that, and those details may change if there's a change in the chief, but those details are still required to be figured out by a new chief. I guess that's the best way to present that.
So the MOU would just change as the police chief?
Correct. It may or may not. That would be up to a conversation between the board, the city manager, the chief of police. That conversation would have to occur as defined by the ordinance. Yep.
Okay.
All right. And then just to answer the last one really quick, we just took that note. I believe that would be a very important consideration to take into the strategy and the plan. All right.
Another question.
So thank you. And yep, you can take up to 3 minutes to share or ask questions. I just want to let that go finish all the way, and then we can respond if needed.
Thank you very much. My name is Rafi Daoudsai. I'm the Charlottesville City resident. And I'm really happy seeing a civilian oversight committee on the police. It's a new, I'm being new to the city and to the U.S. As well. I come from Afghanistan through Special Immigrant Visa Program, and I'm a UVA student at Baton. I'm a second-year grad student. And I was interested and luckily got the chance to come and attend this session. I'm really happy that this was included in the discussion, that there would be a strategy plan to, as it's mentioned in the board work plan, for the awareness of the immigrants, as the lady also mentioned. Many people are not aware that there is a civilian oversight committee. So as you stated, that there should be a strategy to reach out to the community and people to know that there is a committee, a board, who can help them out to navigate how things can be solved. Even like I've heard that some of the Afghan kids have problems in schools, like their fights, and that has led even to police departments. So probably sometime that may come up and end up in this committee. And I think the awareness mechanism, once it's put in place and people are aware that there are certain boards, people that they can help them how to approach to such incidents. Yeah, and I appreciate that, and it's already like discussed, so I have no questions, just wanted to thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comments. And please stay in touch with us.
Sure.
Go batting.
Any other comments tonight? Gentleman in the back, Alvin?
I have one. Well, I was thinking, I'm not sure the community is completely clear on what's gonna happen with Flock. There were a few people here asking questions. And
It's undecided at this point, really, because of the concerns that were raised at the meeting that you and I attended.
Right.
And it got tabled, and there was to have been a strategy meeting yesterday that got postponed. So I think it's unresolved. Is that your understanding, Mr. Moore?
That's the best word I could use. To my knowledge, is unresolved at this time. It's not currently active because the pilot study ended and it was discontinued at that time. So,
Because I don't want to disappoint the police if it's helping them solve shootings and things like that. I mean, I think we want to look at these things both ways.
Yes.
And we have our own views, but we want to hear the police views too. And I get the feeling that they're thinking that's really helpful. And it's
Well, I
helping
think
them
their
solve.
data suggests that it is. I think the ongoing argument is about privacy concerns. And I'm not sure they could, other than just do away with it, I think they've done everything humanly possible with the 7 days, with putting in a lockbox for ICE and DHS and all these other precautions. But as someone raised, I mean, I guess ultimately, if the company that owns Flock, decides to come in and try to access our data, it'd be a court fight. But I mean,
And just as a reminder, we did as a board, or at least portions of this,
Yes.
We did actually review the policy of license plate readers for Charlottesville Police Department. Myself in particular, I put a lot of time and energy into attending to the wordsmithing of these things, and I quite appreciated the document itself, but did have some notes, and it was communicated to the police department. But that was before we had a lot of movement within the board and were able to actually implement these things. So that's also why I'm very eager to get us into these committees and whatnot, because that's the kind of action that I really hope we can do in a very collaborative sense. Because also I think we actually have a very good relationship with the police department in a way that they're very interested in listening to us, and they want to see the board function as it's meant to be another perspective and oversight. And so I think they're all ready for us as well, and they're kind of impatiently kind of excited for us to function as well, so that they can be able to use this certain other perspective to inform license plate reader policy and to see if they're actually doing this well.
and I'll add to that, Albie, that under Ms. Gonzalez, our former director, we did have input. We didn't have a quorum. I mean, originally we did, and then we didn't, but we had input on the policy at the time, and the pilot, and we can certainly revisit it now that we do have a quorum, but we did weigh in with our concerns, but also with some support for something that we thought gave the law enforcement an advantage for the kind of crimes that they target with Flock: gun crimes, stolen vehicles, carjackings, missing children. Those are typically the kinds of things.
So do we know if it's going to be reinitiated?
We don't. That's what everyone's waiting for that decision, and I think it ultimately lies with council.
Yeah, it would.
Council will make that decision ultimately with input from the chief, with input from us if we choose, if we want more input, with input from the city manager.
Let's say it does continue, though. You have a fresh set of recommendations that could be brought up and reviewed by the
Yes,
board to
absolutely.
create an official position and recommendation.
Yeah, we could take
So,
another.
Hopefully,
at
it's. I mean, it depends on whether that was a lost effort or not. But
Do you know if there are data points that are pending that would be necessary before the city council could make an action?
I think the chief has kept them apprised of the statistics, and I mean, I have the numbers, I don't have them off the top of my head, about the number of hits they've had on flock during the pilot the year, and the number, I think it was 180.
well, from the night that we attended,
Yes.
they were presenting information. I think there was the count was 84 resolved cases
but
or
they're-
investigations as a result of
100 and
use
some hits.
out of like 220 or something like
Yes.
that.
So-
But the police department has that data
Yeah.
on the successes. That hasn't really been the scope of the office. The office has been more on the, is it being utilized in accordance with the policy focus?
And does the policy need another look in terms of the board's sort of being the voice of the community, you know, do we bring them additional privacy concerns or other concerns? But, you know, there was an attempt, I mean, we have the shortest retention period in the state, and that came about because of some public outcry about the 30-day retention. So, I mean, it's not that they haven't been responsive, it's just that there was, you were here, Albert, you were here, but some other additional privacy concerns, sort of broad, I thought broad policy concerns were raised.
And even Joe Platini agreed with
Yeah,
the
the
prosecutor.
common attorney agreed that with how it has been formulated and implemented as, you know, as about as.
So I guess the discussion is what can we do
Yeah.
to fix that without having them to say, well, we're not going to use it anymore. Right. If it's solving crimes,
Yeah.
it's a useful tool. How do we protect the privacy?
Get rid of your cell phone.
Let's get real.
We know where you are, who you talk to, who you text, who texts you. All right, any other business of the board? I want to welcome our new members again. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for your presentation. Do you have anything else?
I don't. It sounds like we have a couple items that might be able to come to the board by the next month that
And
have
we'll
some
talk
movement
more
on.
in our
Yeah.
weekly meetings about that.
Try to specify.
Thank you for your time. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you all. Good meeting. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair.